welcome to the Creativity Conference podcast. My name is Aidan Rhode, and I'm today joined by Lauren Barger. Lauren is a visual development artist, a highly respected character designer and illustrator, and general fun art or art maker from the Charlotte area, and has worked with the likes of Disney and Mattel and Sony, and has recently illustrated a children's book by Joe Garrick. Lauren, thank you very much for joining me. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Of course. So, for people who don't know who you are, so what sort of projects are you working on at the moment? What's your general background, and what are you particularly excited to get out of bed in the morning and get stuck?
Actually, I really haven't been working in the industry, in the entertainment industry, that long. I think it's been a year now. I've been in the social media scene for a while, and I was discovered on social media by Sony and started working with them, and now I'm doing a lot of toy design um, with, just a lot of freelance work. So I have a sort of unusual entry into the industry, um, but now that I'm here, I'm doing only freelance work as of right now. And I've been struggling trying to find some studio work. And I think it's mostly because I live in the middle of nowhere. I'm not in California where a lot of the big studios are. But I can get small jobs, small commercial jobs here and there. But I've been focusing a lot on social media again. So I have been, um, working with brands, promotions, and then engaging with my community online has been really great. So that's what I've been doing right now.
Well, one of the things that you've done sort of recently is your coffee draws series. Is that right?
Yeah, I started that last year and I started drawing my followers as I drank my coffee every morning. And I would randomly choose them in the comment section. And it was very small in the beginning. And actually, my skills as an artist were mostly I trained as a traditional artist using traditional mediums, and I was doing portrait art before I got into digital mediums. And I used social media as a way to practice and perform art studies live with my community. So I just chose people randomly every day and would draw something on on their profile on their Instagram or TikTok. I drew my followers for 200 days consecutively, and and then after that, I started doing like small little series. I think I did a series of um, unusual couples, I think it was. So like different couples in so like Ross or not Ross, Rachel and Gunther from Friends, unexpected couples, or like Tarzan and Rapunzel. So I just started doing these fun little series on social media and then that's how I practiced my craft in digital drawing. And then eventually Sony found me and I started working with them on some concept, pre-production artwork for television shows, animated shows. And then, um, yeah, and that's what I've been doing so far is, well, the Sony project is over. And now I'm just doing small commercial jobs for small studios here and there, animation studios, and then also a toy design studio called Pixel. Hasbro, Universal, let's see, Disney, a lot of different major studios. So we work with them in a lot of merchandise development. So
What sparked the idea for the coffee draw series? Was that a lockdown pandemic thing, or just a way to interact with people more?
kind of, yeah. I had during the pandemic, it was a trend on TikTok. A lot of artists were doing it in 2020, 2021, and I like made a mental note. I was like, oh, that's a fun way to interact with your followers. But it just seemed like a lot of work. It was a tremendous amount of work, and it was. But then I refocused. Like I said, I had a little portrait art studio business here, and I just wanted to rebrand, refocus, and try to work on passive income and just different avenues that my art could take me. And that's when I revisited that drawing my followers, and I thought, well, drawing your followers is fun, but it's only interesting if it's done for like a long time. So I was like, okay, I'll do it, but I never really openly admitted like how long I was going to do it or like what the goal was. I just was doing it, um, and to see what would happen. And and yeah, and I did it for 200 days, and I had some media coverage on the news, and some articles written about it, and some really great things happened because of it.
Well, if you'd announced at the very start, I'm going to do this for 1 year, and then you got 200 days in, you're like, oh, geez.
Exactly.
So that's nice that you didn't sort of pigeonhole yourself in there. But 200 days is still that's a long time. A lot of people say, oh, you should write every day, or you should do this every day. How did drawing every day sort of affect that whole flow?
My technical drawing skills were tremendously impacted. You can see the, 2 years ago where I was at, and now the progression is astounding, frankly. So it definitely, even though I didn't feel it at the time, the daily practice and the not only practice drawing every day is one thing, but the drawing study. So it wasn't just drawing something every day. I chose individuals specifically because of their body types, their gender, their race, their age, so I could practice that skill and study it. And that was really hard because it didn't just take an hour or so to draw something. It was really, I did a lot of research on it, and it it was there were definitely some blocks that I hit, and not every day was a winner. Not every day was great, and every day didn't like get better and better. Sometimes there was a week or two where I didn't create my best work. But I think it was just the attempt was what was most important. Just try, and whatever happens, happens. But it was definitely a struggle, but overall worth it.
So, what were some of these blocks that you encountered, and how did you get over them?
Drawing men is kind of hard. I think that the reason that drawing men is hard because it's easier and more organic to draw sort of like S shape. You can't really see what I'm doing right now with my hands, but it's these flowy S curves and shapes, which is more identifiable with the femininity. So generally speaking, I feel like character designers or illustrators gravitate more towards like females when they're drawing something, especially from their imagination. And so drawing something masculine, which would often use very square, rigid, more geometric shapes, doesn't come as naturally. And I struggled with that. I still kind of struggle with that. But I would push myself. Sometimes I'll be like, okay, we're drawing guys today. I really need to push myself out of my comfort zone. So I would pick a guy older. Drawing the older generation is also very difficult because there's a tipping point. You can put a little bit too much detail in it, and it sort of ruins the appeal, and you kind of get a little scary at one point. Too many wrinkles.
And you don't want to offend people either. You don't you don't want people to go, "Hey, I'm not that wrinkly."
Exactly, exactly. So it was definitely a challenge, the older generation and males for me. But strangely enough, all animals, but like dogs specifically, I those are really easy for me. I don't know why. I never really had a lot of practice with animals or anatomy of animals before, but it just came very easy to me.
What was really driving this? Was your secret recipe? Was it the coffee? Was it chips and salsa? Was it?
You did your research. I yeah, I have a few identifying, like a few things about my brand that are super identifiable, and the chips and salsa is one of them. I eat some chips and salsa in the morning, and I drink out of this mint green jadeite antique cup. Um, but what really kept me going, my community. A lot of artists, they don't want to say they do it for their followers or for the feedback they're getting, but I really was. When someone would say, "Oh, that's great. I can't wait to be picked tomorrow," I'd be like, it's motivation to keep going, or um, And then when your platform grows, it's more motivating. You're doing something that people are obviously responding to. So it makes you want to keep going. It's motivation to keep going. So
And do you have any like pastimes or hobbies that aren't illustration related, but sort of keep your mind fresh and maybe take your mind off the work side of things?
I read a lot, but honestly, in the last year or so, I've been working so much. In fact, I worked so much, my drawing tablet went kaput. I was working on an iPad, and I worked on it so long that it just went kaput. And I had to switch to a Wacom, and now I use the Dell 7680 and with a Wacom drawing tablet, so that's a lot. But now that I'm doing so much drawing, just constantly drawing, I listen to my books on audio, which is a little different. But yeah, I so that's what I do to kind of keep my mind fresh.
So you touched on this earlier that you didn't really have a traditional entry into this field of illustration and character design. You started out as what, a legal assistant in Washington D.C.
Yeah,
Were there elements of creativity in that role, and did any of them transfer when you moved over to illustration?
no. It was heavy writing. I wrote a lot, and I worked with undocumented immigrants, and I speak Spanish, so I was doing a lot of translation and writing and translating into English and translating in the courts and things like that. So no, I was creatively writing in a way, but definitely it did not translate. I I went to school for art 1 year, and this was way back when there was no social media, and we were taught in school that the only way to get a job in fine art or illustration, which is what my focus was illustration, was to basically knock on doors at art galleries and have a paper book of all of your print, which is so archaic now. And I just didn't think that that was a successful route. I was like, I love art, enjoy it, but that's just not a good way to live my life. I can't do it. So I quit, and then focused on my other love, which is languages, linguistics, and Spanish literature. So I got my degree in linguistics and Spanish literature, and then went on to translation and working in the courts. And while I was doing that, I was still practicing my art and realized that the social media, this is, social media is alive and well, and that's the perfect way to market yourself and your art. So we had a baby, and when we had a baby, I left DC and started my art business, and it's been a success so far.
Did you do any little doodles on the legal documents, or was that like a hard no?
I was always drawing. There was every like holiday, I would draw everybody cards, like their own personal, like in the office, like I would draw like holiday cards and draw us doing funny things or like people's pets and stuff like that. So always drawing.
And with all the projects that you've worked on since you made that jump, the children's book thing, the toy design thing, like there's lots of different, very different mediums within that. What are the unique challenges that each of those mediums represents, and how do you sort of make that shift in your creative mindset?
I haven't found anything that is too challenging. I think the only thing that I found was extremely challenging was with the book. Um, I don't really. I'm very centered on characters, so character design. I do have some background in background design, but most of the time it's just character and storytelling with the character. So when it comes to the book illustration, I had to sort of have this whole background and have it cohesive and design. It was very graphic design centric, which is not really my forte. So I did have to do some learning. There was some learning there, but everything is really kind of very smoothly blended together. So my concept artwork for the animated shows with Sony, character centric, background design, prop design, costume design. This is all, within my wheelhouse. And then switching over to toy design is similar to character design, costume design. All of the same basic design principles apply, but adding in the elements of structure, like the design of structure, like, could this particular element be something else? Like, could it, you know, have a sort of, how toys have like water reveal things, or you dip it in hot water and it'll like reveal something underneath. So how could we apply those sort of real life ingenuity to these designs, and like keeping that in mind? Or like the container for something might turn into something else. It really smoothly ran into each other, the character design for the show and into toy design. I just had to add that element in. Um, so yeah, everything's really been quite easy except for the book design. That was kind of challenging.
But a good challenge, right? It's a new thing. You got there in the end.
Yeah, I embrace the challenge. I actually right now I started out with traditional media, and then I worked into digital and 2D digital, and now I'm starting to learn 3D sculpting. So I'm a learner of new things. Constantly, I'm trying to learn new things, and so I'm learning 3D sculpting right now, which is why the 7680 Precision is so awesome, because it has a NVIDIA graphics card in it, and so the graphics when you're sculpting 3D, like it's just perfect for that. But I'm still learning. I'm not going to show you anything that I've done because it's quite horrible. But yeah, I'm a learner of new things, so I'm constantly trying to uh, challenge myself. I get a little bored a lot, so
For those who are listening to the pure audio version of this, they can't see your amazing studio behind you and your tablet and all of your art. So, the home studio space that you've curated behind you is obviously amazing. Are there any details in it that when you were first sort of building it all that you thought might be a little unnecessary or a bit frivolous, but now something that you're really proud of and that you are really glad that you implemented?
I didn't really plan what I was going to do when I decorated in here. But like I said, I was drawing a follower every day for 200 days. And now it's been like, I have like over 300, 400 pieces of illustration that were done just for my social media. And so I thought it would be fun just fun to surround myself with all of my followers, my community. And so that's what I've been doing. There's still a lot of space that needs to be filled, but this whole wall and the wall over here, and the wall on the left is almost completely full. And I think I'm going to start putting it on the ceiling too.
Yeah, new studio time. Just gotta buy all new space.
The shelves I use are kind of like stacking, so I can remove them. Like I can take them off and add and stuff like that. So it's really easy to keep going, switch them around.
Are
But
there any of the different styles and stuff that you've worked on, or any of the smaller projects that you've done that you've got a bit of a soft spot for and you're particularly proud of, and you wish more people knew about, but are potentially a bit more underappreciated?
my animal butt watercolor series. That's how I first got my notoriety here in Charlotte. When I first moved here, um, I, like I said, had a little portrait art business and was working with traditional mediums like watercolor, colored pencil. And I wanted to sell at markets like a lot of other artists do. And I was doing market research, and I saw that a lot of watercolor artists tend to do nursery, cutesy, cutesy, flowery, watercolor stuff. And I thought, how can I compete with the same stuff? Like everybody's drawing the same thing: animal heads, animals with flower crowns, flowers. It all just looked very similar in the same style. And I was like, how do I stand out from all of these other artists? And I thought, just thought it would be funny to flip it around and have these same animals with their flower crowns, all the flowery stuff, just their butts. I just thought it'd be funny, and it definitely was and still is, and I love it so much. Um, I don't think it's as well known on my social media as it is just generally here in Charlotte. I've been coined the name the butt lady of Charlotte. And so whenever people see me out there, they'll be like, oh, the butt lady. Yeah. So I've been selling butts for 4 years now, and I love them. People collect them now. That's another thing is they're so unusual and weird that people will ask for more. Like, oh, tell us when you get a panda butt. I would need a, my daughter is collecting all of your butts, and she needs a penguin butt. And so now I have like 25, almost 30. Maybe I do have 30 butts.
Yeah, it's quite the cult following there. But everybody's got to have their niche. So with the rise of like AI art and Midjourney and Doll-E, how are you navigating all of the people training digital models based on animal butts, based on your work or based on other people's work, and using your styles to create new stuff and not necessarily giving artists credit for that? Do you think that people in this industry should feel threatened by that or excited by that, or what's your take?
I don't know yet. I would say instinctively I feel a little threatened by it. But I do know some artists, friends of mine, that are excited. It's a huge new chapter, almost like when 3D animation and sculpting made its way into the animation industry. A lot of artists felt threatened, but at the same time, some of those traditional 2D animators stayed in it, tried something new, figured it out, and now we have, all of the most amazing 3D artwork that you could imagine. And so I feel like we're on the precipice of something great like that, but it does make me nervous. I don't know. I don't know. My colleague and friend Tom Bancroft, who works or used to work in Disney, he made a point that if AI could somehow specifically target your previous artworks, if you're able to upload all of your previous artwork styles and pull from that, then you might be able to. So for him, he does animation. He could do all of the keyframes and then possibly use AI generation to do the in betweens, just sort of that sort of grunt work in animation. He thought it could be a useful tool to do that, and I agree. It could be. There are definitely some benefits, but I do feel a little skeptical. I don't know how it's going to go.
No, that's a really interesting take, because a lot of people have been like, oh yeah, AI is not going to necessarily put people out of their jobs. They're just going to make all of the boring, mundane, repetitive stuff really quick, so you can actually focus on the stuff that requires human intervention or requires new ideation. And so it's almost like it enables you to do more of the stuff that you like, rather than just having to repeat the same frame over and over with just very, very tiny incremental changes. So that out the way, you can really focus on like, oh, how do we make the main frames that we're cutting between as great as possible, because we don't have to spend 4 hours doing all the itty bitty stuff.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'll be interested to see how it's going. It would need to be tailored a bit more from its current state.
The previous guest on the podcast was Mike Pell, who runs the Microsoft lab in New York, and he has been working on AI and metaverse stuff since like the 90s. So he really knows it in and out, and his take on it all is interesting. So that's worth a listen.
Yeah.
From anybody in your career, from anyone in your upbringing, have you received any particularly great advice when it comes to your creative career that has really stuck with you?
I would say that the best piece of information or advice that I have gotten hasn't necessarily come from a person, but rather something I read. And I have been trying to find this article for so long. I cannot find, and I tried last night to find it because I wanted to mention it today. And I still can't find it. But it has a really great graphic that sort of depicts um, the flow of artists and art block. And so I get a lot of people will say that they get in a funk, they're in a creative funk, they're in an art block, they're not motivated. So this is a very common problem that artists have, and a lot of people ask me what's, the best advice to in the creative industry. And in order to defeat those art blocks, this article spoke about the hand coordination and your eye or your brain's ability to receive it. So if you're working with 2D drawing, there may be a phase where you think that your artwork is just the bee's knees. But then a week later, you see your artwork and it just looks like garbage, like absolute garbage. And you can't believe that you were so blind to it before, right? And so you get less motivated, you get in a funk, I'm not making anything I like. According to this article, your brain moves at a different pace than your drawing, your ability to draw, like your technical moves in your hand. So when your brain is receiving the information at a more sophisticated level, you see it as bad, like your artwork is bad, and you're growing. And then it will take time for your hand to catch up to your brain. And then once you're making things that you like, you have grown in your technical skills. And then when you start seeing everything as looking not good, it looks like garbage again, you've hit that platform again where your hand needs to catch up with your brain and your ability to receive the images. So anyways, it showed a cool pictograph of like the stepping stone of how art and creativity grows in the path of creativity in the path of growth. And I thought that was so helpful because whenever I hate my work, I think, okay, I'm growing. Just keep plowing through. I'm growing. This is a growing period. Eventually, I will like what I'm making again. And in fact, right now, I am in a stage where I hate everything I make. It's like the last month, and everything that I'm making this month, I really just don't think it's up to par. I really hate it all. I've been trying lots of new techniques. I've been on YouTube looking at different brushes and just seeing if I can make it better. So I know right now I'm still motivated because I know that I'm learning, and eventually, and because of copy draws, it's not going to take but, maybe 50 days, that I'll get out of this lull, or less, even maybe a week, who knows. So that's really been helpful for me, was that one article that I cannot find.
There's a video I watched a few months ago that's it's definitely not what you're thinking of, but it's along the similar lines. There's a video by a creator called Van Neistat, and he made a video about 6 or 7 months ago called "The Perils of the Professional Creator's Journey," and it explores some of the things that you were talking about in a sort of similar framing. He's a filmmaker by trade, but he's done the video by making all these sort of fairly crude hand drawings and then sort of animated them, and it's worth a watch. It's very, very good, and he's done all sorts of stuff like that. So he's one of my favorite creators on YouTube, and you'll see why if you watch the video, because it's just unlike anyone else. And he's also discussed a little bit about the imposter syndrome in his videos. Have you ever experienced any imposter syndrome effects or?
Yes, 100%. Yes, absolutely. I mean, I was this podunk girl from South Carolina drawing animal butts, and then Sony comes knocking on my door. So yes, I've experienced imposter syndrome, absolutely. But I just pretend that, I'm great and it's awesome. And if I've somehow tricked somebody to believe that I'm great and awesome, it's a win-win.
Do you have any tips for people who are feeling the same way, or maybe who are, that externally their lives seem to be going really well, but on the inside they're sort of struggling with feelings of inadequacy?
I personally feel like I have a great ability to just not worry. Like, I feel so bothered by feelings of anxiety, like it's self-inflicted feelings of anxiety, and or like shame or anything like that, and I just will just flip it off. Like, I don't want to feel that, so I simply won't. I like, I'll think of something else. I'll do something different. I keep myself very busy so that I don't ruminate or have feelings like that. So I don't know. It's a practice skill.
Just turning that on and off, easier said than done for some, but yeah, if you're able to sort of take a step back and sort of look at it from a
Distract
distance,
yourself. I do a lot of distract. I mean, that's why I read so much. It's a great escape.
the chips and salsa in there as well. It's a good.
Just slam those chips and salsa, all bad feelings will go away.
On that note, I've just got one final question for you, and that is, what does creativity as a concept, as a thing, mean to you?
I think that creativity is the ability to think of unique and interesting ideas, but also produce them. So, I mean, being able to think of interesting and creative ideas is one thing, and I think that those individuals are maybe more imaginative, but the creative individuals are able to put those unique or interesting ideas into action. And it can be in any way, through any media, 2D, traditional art, video creation, um, arranging your creative space. I mean, there's so many ways that you can do this, and not just in the creative field. I mean, lots of people can use creativity in the technical fields. There's a lot of ways to just take a good idea and act on it. So that's what I believe creativity is. And what was I going to say? Oh, the even video production. I mean, I make a lot of silly videos on the internet, and I really enjoy the the production side of it. Like, there's always a way to get that outlet, you know, your creative outlet, no matter what you're doing. I mean, I'm a traditional 2D artist, but I also love video production. So, and there's just so many things that you can apply creativity to, not just, one skill.
And keeping it diverse. That's it's a thing that a lot of creatives do. A lot of people are like, oh, I'm a multi hyphenate. I have all of these different facets that I do, and that, keeps the brain juices flowing.
Hmm.
Well, that's about it. From me, thank you very much for joining me and for sharing your creative insights and workflows.
And yeah, thanks for having me on. This was fun. I enjoyed it. I hope somebody gets something out of it.
Eat more chips and salsa. That's the main. That's
Eat
the
more
main
chips
tip.
and salsa. Yes, yes. That is the takeaway from this.
Well, thank you for listening. Thank you for joining me, and make sure you sign up for the Creativity Conference online in October. It's completely free.